Back when I did basic training, yes, we've heard it all before. You march 10 kilometers each way uphill in the snow before breakfast or whatever. Today, I want to do a real comparison between my experience completing basic military qualification as a recruit in 2006 and what it's like now when I went back recently as an instructor. What has changed over nearly 20 years in basic military qualification for the Canadian Armed Forces? I am Petty Officer Fraser. I joined the Naval Reserve in 2005 and I completed my basic military qualification in 2006 at Canadian Forces Base Borden in Ontario. I recently went back to Bootcamp as an instructor, completing basic military qualification and basic military officer qualification at Camp Vimy, Valcartier, Quebec last summer, and today I'm going to talk about what has changed over the years. First, I'd like to start off with a disclaimer. All of the information contained in this video is based on my own personal experience. It does not reflect the views of the Canadian Armed Forces, and I'm not commenting on my opinion on any policy decisions. I'm just trying to provide people who may be interested in joining the Canadian Armed Forces or are preparing for basic military qualification with some information that might help them out. Let's start off with the basics: location, duration, and format for training. The Canadian Forces Leadership and Recruit School in Saint Jean, Quebec is the #1 place in Canada for completing basic military qualification. And I've never been there. I completed my BMQ in Borden, Ontario, Canadian Forces Base Borden. When I completed basic training, it was 13 weeks in duration, all of it residential, and that included a 3-week field phase. As you can see here, my platoon was primarily Navy, and we had a sister platoon that was mostly Army. Looking at this photo brings back a lot of memories. I still remember my instructor of my section, Master Sailor Fitzgerald. You can see him down there in the front. Just looking at this picture, like lots of names are just popping in my head that I haven't seen these people in over 15 years. You really form a lot of lifelong memories when you complete boot camp. Throughout this video, I'll be showing some clips from Saint Jean because it was very comparable to my experience at that time. You can see here they've got individual kind of cubbies for each recruit, but on a floor where they're all like living in a common space. It was a little bit different. The barracks in Borden, we had 4 beds per room. And shared bathrooms at the end of the hall, and a shared common room that had some furniture and even a TV that we were allowed to watch a little bit. On the weekends, you can see me here with my cigar. Thought it was pretty cool, and my guitar. If you stick around to the end of the video, I'll tell you where I kept that guitar stashed for the entire course. For the first 4 weeks of training, we did not get weekends off and we did not leave the T-line. The T-line was an area that had a large parade square in the middle with a track around it. On one end we had the barracks, and then on either wing, one side was the classrooms where we did training and the other side was the mess where we ate. So it was this very small area of basically 4 buildings in a parade square. You didn't leave for an entire 4 weeks. We were quite confined. Fast forward to 2022 and Naval Reserve Basic Military Qualification is completed at Camp Vimy Valcartier in Quebec. The course is done in modules for Basic Military Qualification for non-commissioned members. It's a total of 7 weeks with 1 week online, 3 weeks at your home unit, and 3 weeks residential at Camp Vimy. And for officers, it's a total of 9 weeks. The same for Mod 1 and 2, 1 week online, 3 weeks at your home unit, and then a total of 5 weeks at Camp Vimy. At Camp Vimy, recruits will be living in modular tents for the duration of the course, 10 to 12 per tent. The classrooms are also open air, so you're basically outside for the entire course. In the mod tent, you will have a cot to sleep on. You will have a barrack box for your kit and personal belongings, as well as a kit bag, and very little space. Compared to in 2006 when I did it, we would have our bed, we had a large locker full of all of our uniform, we had a desk with a dresser in it with drawers to store clothing and things like that. So there is more personal space for your kit. All right, let's talk about pre-BMQ. What is it like when you first join? So back when I joined in September of 2005. So I missed out on basic training that summer, and I had to wait all the way until the following summer to go on BMQ. During that period, I was lucky. I'm a musician, so I got to play in the band. Normally, you wouldn't work in your department until you graduate basic military qualification, but they were a little bit more flexible in those days, let's say. And I was performing with the band for Remembrance Day in November 2005 after I had just joined in September. So they threw me right into it, slapped a uniform on me, and I don't think that we do that very much anymore. But so now when you join, you're going to work in the training department. You're not going to work in the department of your occupation until you graduate from basic military qualification. The good news here, the difference is that you can begin your Mod 1, your online training, and your Mod 2, the 3 weeks at your home unit, right away when you join. You don't have to wait until spring. I'll touch on the Module 1 and 2 training a little bit. So Module 1 is online training. You're going to complete courses on the rank structure, military history, CBRN, different things that you can do in a classroom setting with online classes, and then doing quizzes at the end to confirm your knowledge. And that can be done either at the home unit or at home, because it's done online, and you'll be paid 6 full days of pay for completing that either way, whether you do it at work or at home. And then Module 2 can be done either full-time or part-time. So if you're joining in the spring, we do offer full-time Module 2 training. That's Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So it's not residential. You go home and sleep in your own bed each night and have the weekends off. Or you can do it part-time, which would follow our regular training schedule, meaning you'll come in on 1 or 2 evenings per week and 1 or 2 weekends per month. And doing it this way, it takes about 3 or 4 months to complete the 3 weeks of full-time training. Back in 2005, you've just been shipped off to basic training. What's the first thing that happens? You're gonna sit in that barber chair and they're gonna shave your head. They're gonna give you that buzz cut, military style. In 2022, we did not require recruits to shave their head. They had to have a haircut within normal dress regulations, so it had to be short, you know, buzzed on the sides and the back, and then short on the top, but not complete buzz cut all the way around. You wouldn't be able to get away with long hair like I have now. I think this is the longest that my hair has been since before I joined the military 17 years ago, and I got it shaved off at boot camp. All right, let's talk about kit. So in 2006, when I did basic training, kit was issued at boot camp. You would fly out there in your civilian clothes and get all of your uniform and equipment when you got there. Personally, I had a little exception to this because I was performing with the band before I went to boot camp. I think that that's a little bit abnormal, but I got some uniform to get me started before I went, but I still went and did the whole kit issue when I got there. So you're in a huge warehouse full of uniform and equipment. You go from station to station, you get measured, you try things on, and all 60 people times 2 platoons, all 120 people go together and get all your kit issued at the same time, making sure it all fits and everybody has everything they need all at once. This is really great because it makes sure that everybody has everything and it's very consistent. Now, because of the Mod 1 and Mod 2, you are going to get issued your uniform at the home unit. And this means that you need to take it all with you to boot camp, which is putting responsibility on you. So make sure you check out my What to Pack for Basic Military Qualification video, put it up in the corner there for you to make sure you don't forget anything on your way to boot camp. Quick summary of what you need to bring. So in 2006, we had more kit. We had our NCDs, that's our naval combat dress. We also had our 3B, which is, we call the salt and pepper, the short sleeve white shirt, black pants, and shiny parade boots. And we also had to have Oxford shoes, polished and shined. And we had CAD-PAD, the camouflage. So we had a lot of different uniforms to maintain, multiple sets of each, which was a lot to prepare for inspections, which we'll talk about in a minute. Now, in 2022, it was NCDs only. No dress uniform, no CAD-PAD for non-commissioned members. Officers were issued CAD-PAD because they had the longer field portion. That extra 2 weeks that they have for the residential phase that makes it 5 weeks instead of 3 weeks is mostly in the field. So they were issued CAD-PAD, but for non-commissioned members, they only have 2 days in the field, so they didn't think it was worth it to give them CAD-PAD. So you're in NCDs for the whole course, even graduation. One note to add to that, the brand new NECU, the Naval Environmental Combat Uniform, has been issued. So NCD, the blue shirt, looks like it's no more. You'll probably be doing basic training this summer in the black NECUs. While we're talking about clothing, I'm going to give a little shout out to the CAF Clothing Store. I'm currently on leave, so I'm not supposed to be wearing my uniform. I thought, what am I going to wear in my videos? This great navy hoodie here. I think it looks pretty good. You can check out the website. They have Army, Navy, and Air Force clothing and some generic CAF clothing. Lots of different clothing items. Give it a look. I'll throw in another quick disclaimer here that this video is not sponsored. CAFclothing.ca is not paying me any money. I just like the hoodie. Next up, let's talk about inspections. And inspections have a lot to do with the kit that you're issued and the accommodations that you're staying in. So in 2006, inspections were incredibly detailed and had an incredibly high standard. We had more kit to be inspected. We had 2 pairs of parade boots, 2 pairs of combat boots, one that you're wearing and one on the bed, and your Oxford shoes. So your boots had to be all perfectly spotless, shiny, lined up at the end of your bed. We had real beds where we had to have hospital corners, had to have those sheets and bedding all folded, everything perfect with a measuring ruler. Inside of our locker was inspected, so all of our uniforms had to be hanging equally distanced apart, perfectly crisp, seams on all the ironing. Even your toiletries got inspected. My toothpaste container had to be dry and clean, no little toothpaste on the lid. So it was just completely over the top, high standards, spotlessly clean. We also had to sew. We had to have our names on patches individually sewn onto every single clothing item, including socks and underwear. So that is each individual sock with your name sewn on it. So there was a very, very high standard for inspections when I completed basic training in 2006. Fast forward to Camp Vimy and you have no dress uniform. You have no boots to spit polish. You have no white shirts to iron. You have no bed to fold the hospital corners on. You have a cot with a sleeping bag that must be nicely displayed properly. You still have to have your combat boots blackened and not dirty. You have to have your blue NCD shirts ironed, but you don't have a locker full of uniform to be inspected. You have a barrack box that stays closed during inspections. For both courses, you have to have your weapon out for inspection clean, so that was very similar. So there's some similarities. Yes, we still had the highest level of inspection quality that we could in 2022. There was just a lot less kit to prepare. You didn't have to do a lot of the things that I had to do. Just a side note here, I do think that those skills were valuable. At the time, it was annoying to sew my name onto every sock, but looking back, like I learned how to sew. I'd never sewn before that, and now as an adult, I sewed my daughter a Halloween costume one year. So you pick up some skills. Next up, let's talk about PT, physical training. In 2006, we had PT led by PSP, that's personnel support staff, so the fitness staff. We did it in the gym facilities, we did circuit training with equipment, we did all kinds of different things. We could even use the gym facilities on the weekend, including the track, rock climbing, swimming pool, obviously the gym with all the weight equipment. So we had access to all these resources, and we had professional PSP staff instructing PT periods throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the course. At Camp Vimy, physical training is instructor-led, so I taught PT. We got a course from PSP on how to teach PT, and we did it in the mornings. We didn't have equipment. It was mainly just body weight exercise that could even include your rifle and your day pack, and we basically just did stretches, warm-ups, some body weight exercise, and running in the mornings. Let's talk about all the different performance objectives, the things that you have to accomplish to pass the course. And the new course may be shorter, but you have to accomplish the same things. You have to do all the same performance objectives, so the course is equivalent, you're getting the same training. So let's talk about each one of them, how we squeeze that into a shorter format. First, let's talk about drill. I remember drill. I remember doing drill for hours and hours, it seemed, in the blazing sun on the outdoor parade square, dripping sweat, can hardly stand up, exhausted. We worked hard at drill. We did drill for hours every day for weeks on end. We looked sharp. We were, in my memory, incredibly skilled at drill. We did a fantastic job. So I really enjoyed getting up to that proficiency in drill. I actually vividly remember, maybe it was like week 7, 8, 9, like later on in the course when we kind of reached that really high level of proficiency. If we were having a bad day, if our performance wasn't quite up to standard, we're moving a little sluggish, I very distinctly remember instructors yelling at us, "You look like garbage. This is week 4. You look like week 4." Like, as in, the level we were at in week 4 was an insult compared to the level we should be at now in week 7, 8, 9. And looking back now at the current course, they don't even get to week 4. It's only 3 weeks. So, you know, we may have been at a higher standard. In the current format, drill is not taught on the Mod 3, the residential portion at Camp Vimy. It's actually taught during the Module 2. And I'd say, realistically, it's kind of the main portion of the Module 2. You're doing a lot of drill at the home unit. So recruits are expected to show up at Camp Vimy having already passed their drill test and already being proficient at drill. So that's one of the reasons the residential portion is shorter, because you're not spending time doing drill periods, training and learning drill and being evaluated on drill. You're supposed to already have all the knowledge that you need. There will be some drill practices, but those are just to rehearse and prepare for the graduation parade. You're not learning any new drill movements. To be clear, recruits in the current format need to pass the drill exam in order to graduate the course. They need to meet the same standard. I just mean that as a group, we spent more time doing drill and we went above and beyond just what's in the drill exam. We did all of the most complicated drill movements in the drill manual, including about turn on the march, incline turns on the march, double time, everything that they could throw at us. Maybe it's a good time to add it now. I forgot to mention it in the intro I was going to, that I actually won the award for top recruit. So I was the top candidate in my platoon and received the award at the graduation parade. So I think that means that I know what I'm talking about a little bit. Just checking my notes here, one more point I wanted to add is that just the environmental factor, at least at HMCS Chippewa on the Mod 2, I was an instructor for the Mod 2 drill classes and drill exam. We're doing it on an indoor parade square in an air-conditioned building. So it's a lot different, and we only have like kind of 8 to 12 students, candidates in a Mod 2 because we're just one unit and they all filter and go off to basic training together, right? So you're in a smaller group, which is good. You're getting like high quality one-on-one instruction a lot of the time. But you're not marching in a giant platoon and you're not marching in the blazing sun for hours on end, dehydrated, sleep deprived. You know, you're coming in after sleeping in your own bed and you're going to a unit again, inside, air conditioning. It's just a different experience. Next up, we have CBRN training. That's chemical, biological, radioactive, and nuclear, I think. Anyway, this is basically putting on your gas mask and your other CBRN kit. So I'd say this is the same in each course. You have to do the gas hut. In the new course, it's in the same format as, I believe, from the best of my recollection, in 2006. So you go in the gas hut, they're gonna do the tear gas, you gotta get that gas mask on, and there's a couple different protocols you have to go through and everything in the gas hut. So that's the same. I don't think much has changed there. Let's talk confidence course or obstacle course or whatever you want to call it. The thing you see in most basic training videos, people climbing over walls, climbing on ropes, crawling under wires, all that stuff. So we did the one at Borden. It's very, very similar to the one that you see here at St. John's. Pretty standard confidence courses across the CAF, the different obstacles that you have to be able to go over, some individually, some as a group. It's awesome, super fun team building experience. Love it. In 2022, we did the confidence course at Camp Vimy, and I actually mentioned in my vlog, and you haven't seen it, but I did record 20 episodes of everything that happened last summer. Talk more about that later. I did mention that I actually really liked it. I liked how it was in a forested area, kind of like this, on a path where you had to like, you know, each obstacle you'd come up on it along this path. You couldn't just see the whole course. In Borden, and it looks like in this video here too in St. John, it's just in a big open field and you can see all the obstacles and you just go from one to the next. This was like really fun, that it felt more like a mission. It felt more like exciting to, you know, I had my recruits, you know, getting down on one knee and providing cover for each other and advancing in a tactical way between obstacles and like making it really fun. So I think it was an awesome obstacle course. The one point that was brought to my attention was that the obstacle course we were on, I believe, was actually the cadet obstacle course. So that means that teenagers could be doing this course. So the individual obstacles were just a little bit easier, a little bit smaller, a little bit more attainable. And you can see in this photo here, for example, the wire. That's not barbed wire, it's wires, but there's no barbs. You can see that the recruit is wearing the gray coveralls that are issued. These are normally just worn like in the evenings while you're back at the camp in the shacks working on ironing your uniform, you're not wearing it, or doing your laundry or whatever. It's for like back at the shacks. But they didn't want recruits wearing their NCDs on the confidence course, and they didn't have CAD pads. So we put them on the confidence course in their gray coveralls, and you'll also see the helmet they're wearing. It's more like kind of like a rock climbing helmet that we issued to the recruits because they didn't have CAD pad. They weren't issued real Kevlar combat helmets. Where for things they need to be wearing a helmet, they were just wearing these kind of rock climbing helmets, which fit a lot better, are a lot lighter, a lot easier to wear. So that was a little bit of difference in uniform there as well. Next, let's talk about the march, the Rucksack March. I get lots of questions about the march, so let's go through all the details. In 2006, it was the 13-kilometer march, and we did it in full fighting order with a fully packed rucksack, weapon, tack vest, combat helmet, all that stuff, probably about 60 pounds of gear. And we worked up to this march throughout the course. We started with shorter marches, built up the distance, built up the weight, started with a lighter pack, increased the weight, till by the end we did 13 kilometers with full fighting order and fully packed rucksack. Also, at the end of the march, we had to do the 100-meter fireman's carry. So you've just marched 13 kilometers, and at the very end, you got to pick up your friend next to you, throw him on your back, and go the last 100 meters. So that was an incredible sense of accomplishment, incredible rush of adrenaline to do that fireman's carry at the end. 13-kilometer march, awesome. And at Camp Vimy Bootcamp, you are going to do an 8-kilometer march. The course is 3 weeks in length, so you're going to do 3 total marches working up to that distance. You're going to do a 3K, a 5K, and then the 8K. And we did not do the fireman's carry at the end. I don't know if that's standard. The day we did the march, it was like 38 degrees. It was completely and super, super humid. Like, we had people who were struggling just with the 8K. Never mind going further than that or carrying somebody on their back. Also, as I mentioned before, they're not wearing combat helmets. They're just wearing these lighter kind of rock climbing helmets. I think they might have even had the helmets strapped onto their back. They didn't have to wear them. Also, they didn't have full rucksacks. They had what I'd call more of like the day pack, smaller pack, less weight. So in general, they got less weight. They don't have the helmets, and it's 8K instead of 13K, and no fireman's carry. So a little bit of a different experience there as well. Weapons training. On both BMQ courses, 2006 and 2022, you have to competently fire the C7A2 service rifle with live ammunition at the range. And we had slightly different formats for working up to this, but they were both pretty comparable. A couple of little differences. In 2006, we did do bayonet training, so we fixed bayonets to our rifles. And then one thing that I liked about 2022 is we had the SATS trainer. So it's a trainer where you have a tracker on the muzzle of your rifle, you're pointing at an electronic screen, you have air pressurized magazines so that the weapon will function properly without ammunition, and you're getting to go through all your drills and do an electronic range before you go to the real range. So that was really cool. We didn't have that on my BMQ, so that was a cool training tool that has been added. I would say that one of the biggest challenges with the current format is how condensed the course is. So you're doing all these same performance objectives, your weapons training in your range shoot, your CBRN doing the gas hut, your marches, going to the confidence course. And in 2006 when I did it, it was always like on the calendar, okay, this is the next big thing coming up in a couple of days. And we had plenty of days where we were just doing PT, drill, classroom, meals, maintaining our kit, none of these like big events or performance objectives, and you could work towards kind of the next one. Whereas in the current format, it's like, okay, you just finished the gas hut, wash that tear gas out of your eyes, and this afternoon we're going straight to the confidence course. Like, they're just back to back to back. It's a super intense frequency of training. You're just getting hit with all of these things. So I think that is more challenging, that you have a little bit less time to prepare for each individual performance objective because they're coming at you so hard and fast in the condensed course schedule. A couple more things I'll add about the accelerated pace of the course. One of them is retests. So at Basic Military Qualification, I'd say the majority of people who fail are because of attitude, like having too many counselings and disciplinary issues and then being counseled out, or because of injury. They get injured and they simply cannot physically complete the course. There's not that many failures due to not being able to achieve the performance objectives or pass the academic standard. And the reason for this is retests. We want you to be successful. We want you to pass. So if you're unable to pass one of the performance objectives, we are going to give you some extra training and we're going to give you another shot at it, right? Almost all the performance objectives have an opportunity to retest. So the issue comes up when the course is so short, you have a little bit less time to do this. So you could get a retest, but it might be just 1 or 2 days later instead of a week or 2 later, where you have more time to receive extra training and work up to it. So we actually did have, I think, one person who was unable to complete the course because of not passing performance objectives when I was an instructor. So I don't remember what the numbers were back in 2006, but I definitely remember people failed performance objectives and had lots of time to train and practice and then do a retest. So the other one is injuries, which is kind of the same thing. As I mentioned, injuries is one of the more common reasons for being unsuccessful on the course. If you get an ankle injury and you can't march, you can't do the march, you can't pass the performance objective, you can't pass the course. So on a 13-week course, you get kind of a more minor injury that sidelines you for a week or two. Okay, so you miss a week and you heal up and you can join back in. you have time to catch up on any critical training that you might have missed. If the course is only 3 weeks long and you hurt yourself and you're out for a week, well, you've just missed so much. You've missed so much critical training and performance objectives that it's very difficult to squeeze that in given the time frame. So same issue existed in each, that an injury could sideline you and prevent you from graduating the course. But when the course is shorter, it's kind of a higher likelihood that an injury is going to prevent you from being able to complete all the training. So the best piece of advice is injury prevention. Make sure that you're arriving at the course physically fit. Make sure that you're not overexerting yourself. Know your body, know your limits. Do the best you can to achieve the performance objectives, but also try to be careful and try to do everything you can to avoid injury. Warming up, stretching in the mornings when you can before you do physical activity, making sure that you're good to go. All right, I'm going to jump here and ask you, if you're enjoying the content, please subscribe. I rarely give the subscribe ask in my videos, but I was watching some YouTube and I always see other YouTubers saying, oh, like 50% of you aren't subscribed, 60%, whatever it is, please hit subscribe. Half of you aren't subscribed. I just took a look at my analytics and 88% of the people watching videos in the last 28 days are not subscribed. So almost 90% of you haven't hit that button. Please do it. It helps me out. It helps out the channel. Having better analytics, I think, can help with my chain of command. Give me permission to film content and bring you lots of good Prairie Sailor content and what's going on in the Canadian Armed Forces. So please hit subscribe. Let's get back to it. All right, let's talk about the field phase, my favorite. In 2006, we had a 3-week field phase. We lived in the bivouac for 3 weeks. At Camp Vimy, the field phase is 2 nights, 1 night in the bivouac and 1 night in the FOB. That's the forward operating base. So I'm going to go through and compare some different elements of the field phase other than just the duration, the very different duration. I want to talk about meal preparation. I want to talk about topography and navigation. I want to talk about the missions and scenarios. We'll talk a little bit about sleep deprivation and living conditions. So for meal preparation, in 2006, we had largely IMPs, that's individual meal packs, and we had to prepare them ourselves. So we were on like a meal preparation duty rotation where a small group of people were assigned to cook meals for the entire platoon. We set up the camp stoves, we lit them up, we got the IMPs into the pressure cookers, got the water in there, got them pressurized, got them heated up, and then distributed the food to everyone. So once you've been on the dinner duty a few times, you really get the hang of it and you get proficient at preparing meals in the field. In 2022, Camp Vimy, we had 1 meal in the field that was IMPs, and the instructors kind of led showing the students how to do it. So we had more than one. We had like 5 or 6 camp stoves, so we could break our 60 members of our platoon down into smaller groups and give them a chance to operate the camp stove. Next up, we got topography and navigation. So we did do topography navigation training on Basic Military Qualification in Camp Vimy. They got to do it for a day in the field, same as we got to do in 2006. I'd say the difference was in 2006, because we had more time, we then utilized those skills in a practical setting throughout the 3-week field phase. We would have scenarios and missions where we were given a map and an 8-figure grid point, and we had to navigate our way there and find our way back to base. Of course, we had the assistance of the instructors, but we basically used the skills practically more over a period of time. And then for sleep deprivation, for both, we worked super long hours, had short periods of time to sleep, and duty rotation at night. So I'd say it was the same for both. Again, the only difference being that, you have a couple short sleeps. When you're only in the field for 2 nights, your body can kind of keep up with it. When you're in that kind of sleeping for 4 hours or less per night, and then sometimes even less if you're on duty overnight, that adds up after a week, after 2 weeks, and you really start to kind of live in a different zone of sleep deprivation. So I don't know if they really kind of got to the same point, but they definitely got some experience living in the field, being on duty overnight, and being tired. And lastly is the missions and scenarios. Same as you see here in the videos, we had Op 4, which is opposition force, which is basically actors or other members of the Canadian Armed Forces who are acting as opposition force, as either civilians or other military forces in scenarios, fictional scenarios that then the recruits will have to react to. So whatever they're going to be, your forward operating base being attacked, going out and finding somebody and rescuing them and providing medical assistance, securing an airstrip, whatever, we had all these fictional scenarios that we got to act out. And that was one of my favorite parts of the entire course. For Camp Vimy, for non-commissioned members, we did not have opposition force. But basically, as instructors, we did the best we could to provide them that same kind of fun experience. We acted out our own scenarios. We would have just like one instructor stay with the students, and the other 3, we were in teams before, would go and be opposition force and attack the bivouac or attack the fob. And then we also had like a kind of giant battle between the 2 different platoons at one point with blank ammunition and everything. So they did get to have some experience that we put together ourselves as instructors, but there wasn't a formal, like, written out series of missions and scenarios that they needed to accomplish with opposition force actors. For basic military officer qualification, there was. So the basic military officer qualification has that extended field phase. They had a 10-day field phase. And during that period, they did get to do all the mission scenarios with the opposition force. And the biggest difference between that, in my experience, and my experience in 2006, was that for the officers, they get to lead the scenarios because it's leadership training. So they go through the 16 steps of battle procedures and mission planning, mission analysis, all that stuff, and then they lead their section on completing these missions. They're making decisions and giving orders. So we never did that when I did basic training because I'm a non-commissioned member. The instructors more led the section, and we got a little bit of taste of being like the section senior, but we didn't go through the full mission analysis and drafting formal orders and all that stuff. So for the basic military officer qualification at Camp Vimy, they did get to do all that, and that was the highlight of the course for me. Guiding those young officers on doing their missions, it was super, super fun. I learned a ton, I really appreciated it, and it was really, really high quality of training. And I wish that the non-commissioned members had a little bit more time to kind of do the same kind of thing, but they do it later in their career at PLQ, Primary Leadership Qualification. Let's talk about some of the fun stuff. Let's talk about the weekends off. So for a 13-week course, you're gonna have a lot more weekends, right? As I mentioned before, we were confined to base for the first 4 weeks, but after 4 weeks, if we had good behavior and good performance, we could earn weekends off. Having these weekends off was an amazing experience that I will never forget. Filling out those leave passes, working hard all week, and actually getting permission to go off the base after living in such a strict and confined environment, it was like the ultimate freedom. It was amazing. So here we have a picture of me and some friends from BMQ at Niagara Falls. We rented a cabin one weekend at Wasaga Beach, went on trips to Toronto. Like, every weekend was an adventure, except for when it wasn't. Which brings me to my next point, which is discipline. But first, let's touch back on 2022 weekends. So if you're a non-commissioned member, 3 weeks, you do not get any weekends off. You might get 1 night off at the end of the course after your graduation, and sometimes your flight won't be until the next morning. So you get 1 night after grad where you're allowed to go off the base, stay in a hotel, celebrate with your platoon or whatever you want to do, and then have your flight in the morning. So there's that 1 night off, but you don't get any weekends off during the course. You're going to be confined to the base. You're not allowed to leave. For basic military officer qualification at Camp Vimy, you might get that same night off before your flight after graduation, but you also could get 1 weekend off, or at least a day off near the end of the course between like the 4th and the 5th week. So you can get a leave pass, leave the base, do what you want to do while you're on leave, and come back for at least 1 night during the course between week 4 and week 5. That was my experience anyway. These things can change. So if you go, don't say, oh, P.O. Fraser on YouTube told me we got a night off. You might not, okay? Okay, like I said, let's talk about discipline. So in 2006, when we had these weekends off, these incredible adventures of freedom from the base, what was the biggest disciplinary tool they had was the potential to take that away. So if we didn't meet the standard, if we were late too many times, or we had any disciplinary issues, the weekend off could be taken away. It could be taken away for the whole platoon or as an individual. So if you had individual disciplinary problems, the most common form of punishment was to put you on fire picket duty on the weekend. So we all had to do fire picket duty, which is wear the hard hat, walk around with a flashlight at night, make sure there's no fires. Basically just a duty to keep you awake and give you some responsibility. But if you got that on the weekend, you couldn't go get a leave pass. So it was a way to keep people in line if they're having individual disciplinary issues. For 2022, yes, we also had fire picket, but because it wasn't like taking away a weekend or anything like that, we didn't really use it as discipline. I guess we could have, like I just didn't personally use that as a disciplinary tool. Basically, it was just getting written up, right? You're gonna receive counselings, you're gonna be counseled on any disciplinary deficiencies, and if you get a certain number of counselings without showing improvement throughout the course, you could be recoursed. You could have to be unsuccessful and have to start over from the beginning. And speaking of being recourse, this is basically the worst punishment that can happen, right? Well, I guess getting kicked out of the Canadian Armed Forces. But usually they'll give you another shot unless you do something really bad. We even had someone who failed the course on the last day, on graduation day, was told they weren't graduating as an instructor in 2022. And that sucks for them, like what a terrible feeling. But still, it's only 3 weeks. What do? You go on the next course. You can still graduate this summer, right? 3 weeks is not that long. When the same thing happened in 2006, could happen at week 5, could happen week 7, 9, 10, 11. People were getting sent home at week 10, 11, 12 in the 13-week course. Like, that's your summer. Now, if you're a reservist and you're only available in the summer, if you're in university during the year, that's delayed your career progression an entire year. You can't go and do basic training until the next summer. So a little bit more of a serious consequence than just having to redo a 3-week course. Okay, so you don't get recourse. You did it. You made it to the end. You're graduating. Let's talk about graduation. So in 2006, I remember graduation. I remember because I got to march up to the front and receive my award. We wore 3B salt and peppers, so your short sleeve white shirt, ironed, your black pants and your black spit polished parade boots, and peak cap. It's not your ceremonial uniform, it's not your number 1, but it is a more dress uniform than just your naval combat dress or your CAD pad, so it felt special. We also had bayonets, so fix a bayonet to your rifle. That feels cool. That's a little bit level up, especially when you do that shoulder arms, you're throwing it up. That bayonet's like a little bit close to your face. It feels pretty intense. It's like the next level, makes it a little bit special. And we had a live band, a marching band. So military musicians in their uniforms with the bass drum to march to, all that stuff. It really felt like a big deal. I mean, it probably felt like a big deal because I was the one graduating, but still, I feel like there's a lot of elements that elevated it. Oh, and we had photos, as you saw in the thumbnail there. We had professional portraits, individual, and the group photo, professionally done, printed up. We got to take them home with us with our graduation certificate. So really, I feel like graduation was a big deal, and we got some special elements to make it stand out. For 2022, the graduation parade at Camp Vimy was done in NCDs, Naval Combat Dress. We did not have any dress uniform, so you don't have any shiny boots to polish. Don't have to worry about that. And also, we didn't have a live band. It was just a recording. And unfortunately, there was also still COVID protocols going on at the time. And for one of the graduation parades, they weren't allowed to have guests. So with no band, no dress uniform, no guests, it's kind of hard to make it special. But I mean, I'm sure it was still special for the recruits. It's still a significant accomplishment. And I hope that their graduation was enjoyable. We also didn't do any professional portraits for them. And photography and anything like that for social media in general was not allowed. So it's kind of funny. I feel like I have more pictures from 2006 when nobody had good cameras on their cell phones. I literally had a disposable film camera that you get at the gas station. I have more pictures of my Basic BMQ in 2006 than in 2022. So that's a little bit unfortunate because I feel like, you know, the recruits would really appreciate having photos to take home and remember. The point of this video is not to make it seem like I had it harder. I'm not going to gripe because basic training was more challenging. I think that you should suffer because I suffered. The point is, I want you to know what to expect. And I want people, there's a lot of people who are considering joining the Canadian Armed Forces, and basic training may seem like an obstacle. I want to let them know that the Naval Reserve, with our module version of doing it, is quite attainable. You can make it happen. And also anyone who has applied, already joined the Canadian Armed Forces, could help you know what to expect and to prepare for basic military qualification. So I hope that this information is helpful to you. And I do think it's a great program. I think that it being more flexible opens it up to be accessible to more people. If you look at myself as an example, joining in September of 2005, if they had the version they have now, I could have done my Mod 1 and Mod 2 over the course of the year and done my Mod 3 right away in the spring, meaning I could have moved on to naval environmental training and my occupational training right away in my first summer, in the summer of 2006. Instead, I had to wait all year, just putting along with my department, not really progressing in my training and my career, and then do 13 weeks of basic training, which is basically the whole summer in June, July, and into August. So I couldn't do the next step in my career until the following summer. So basically, with this new program, you are accelerating people's career progression basically by an entire year if they're joining anytime between like September and March for a large portion of the year. So I think it's a great program. I think that they're getting a really high quality of training. I don't think that there's been any degrading in the training quality. The Naval Reserve, or the reserves in general, is supposed to be a part-time job. And in the old way, okay, here's a part-time job. First thing you got to do is work 13 weeks full-time. Those two things don't really jive. So being able to do it in modules makes it a little bit more accessible as a part-time job. Maybe more people are going to be able to join and to participate in the reserves because of this module basic training. So for that, it's a good thing. Good luck in your basic military qualification. I hope this video was helpful, and you can let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Thanks. Have a good one.